Matthew chapter 6. Matthew 6, verses 19 to 24 is where we're going to be this morning. The title of the message is Storing Treasures. Okay, so Matthew 6, verses 19 to 24. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in or steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eye is the lamp of the body. So then, if your eye is clear, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light that is in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth. Pray with me. Father, I thank you that you just want us. You want all of us. You want our hearts. As we unpack your word this morning, God, help us just to hear your heartbeat. God, that you love us, that you paid the ultimate price for us. God, you just want us. You want a real relationship with us. That includes all of us. Every part of us. Whatever you need to do in us today, I pray that you would do it. I just pray for your Spirit to be here in a mighty way. Just have us ready for what you want to teach us. It's in Jesus' name we pray. So since we've kind of started back on this Sermon on the Mount series, we've really looked more at how Jesus is teaching us how to live privately as Christians so far in the book of in Matthew 6, right? So when you give to the needy, don't do it for show. Don't let your left hand know what your right hand's doing, right? Do it in secret, right? And then when you pray, don't go out on the street corners or on the synagogues. Do it, close the door, go into your room, your closet, close the door, do it privately. When you fast, don't put on sackcloth and ashes, right? So be the real deal in your heart. But so far, Jesus is really hitting on the private heart aspect in Matthew 6. And then the last half of Matthew 6, he starts kind of looking at how should we live our lives kind of publicly. Not for show, hear me, but just kind of in general. What should it look like? And so he starts kind of looking at what we're going to start seeing over this week and next week is Jesus starts saying every part of your life should be for Jesus. Not just some parts. Every part of your life serves the purpose of serving his kingdom. And that's what I want us to see. Now, here's the problem. As Americans, we tend to separate things. We tend to kind of categorize and things like that where we separate. So here's my Christian life, and here's my daily life. And that's kind of almost the mindset we see. So we have certain days. I could say, what days are set aside for church in America? And you would say Sundays, and it used to be Wednesdays. Now, not as much as it used to be. I remember when I was growing up, going to church, and like all of my friends, we would go every Wednesday night. And there was no games, there was no practice, there was nothing. It was set aside for church on Wednesday night. You don't see that nearly as much anymore. But still, we tend to categorize like that's church night. So let's not have practice. Sunday is church day. And again, I appreciate there are days set aside for certain things, but that's what we do as Americans. And I think what Jesus is trying to show us over the end of Matthew 6 is, no, all of your life is to be for me. Everything, every part of you, every element of your life should honor me. Not just what you do on Sunday, not just what you do on Wednesday nights. All of your life, all of your days is for me, is to honor me. Paul David Tripp. Let me tell you a quote by Paul David Tripp. Listen to this, okay? Here's what he says. He challenges people by saying this. The next time you're standing in your kitchen or your bedroom or at your desk, I want you to look at drawers. Yes, drawers. The place where you store poultry or clothes or staplers and pens. And what he's saying is, we have drawers. Like if you go home and you go to your kitchen, you go to your bedroom, and you have certain things in certain drawers, right? You have certain things in certain places. And I bet if I go to your bedroom, you may be like me, and you have one drawer, this is my t-shirts. And maybe you're like me, okay, this is the second drawer, these are my other t-shirts that aren't as nice, okay? And then the next drawer is, okay, here's my shorts. And so we have different drawers, and if I put something in the wrong drawer, Julie gets on to me. But there's very much categorized, that's how we live. Or if I go into your kitchen, you probably have a drawer for all your utensils, and then maybe some for your measuring spoons and things like that. And then, of course, we all have that junk drawer in the kitchen, too. But we categorize and we put certain things in certain drawers, and that is what we do. The problem is that spills over into our daily life, especially as our walk with Christ. Like, this is my spiritual day, this is my spiritual time, and the rest of the time. So we kind of have a real lifetime and a spiritual lifetime. And so what Paul David Tripp talks about is you kind of have drawers. You have two drawers as Christians so often. This is us so often, okay? You have one that is your real life drawer. And we go to this drawer all the time. Like this drawer has all the stuff. So maybe it's the stuff that you like doing. And so, Darby loves playing softball now. So I brought a softball and with love. And so we go to our real life drawer and her eyes light up and she smiles. She's like, yes, we need to go play. And so, or maybe I got a golf ball. Yeah. And I didn't bring stuff for all of it. Now you play golf, Riley, see? So this could be for you too. So you have different things. You're like, okay. And so we open our drawer all the time. Or maybe, like last night, going to the Tennessee game. And so that's our real life drawer. Yes, we get to go to the Tennessee game, and we open that real life drawer. Maybe we go here, family time. Yes. And so we go to our real life drawer and we do stuff with our family, and that's great. I think that honors God. That's fantastic. But our money's in here. This is my money. I earned this money. I worked hard this week to get this money, and I go to my real life drawer because it's my money, and I'm going to spend it how I want to. Or my possessions. This is my house. I paid a lot of money for this house. This is my car. I paid a lot of money for this car. And it's our real life drawer, like it's mine. Jesus, no, this is mine. I worked hard for this. Maybe your job. You think I go to my real life drawer every single day that I go to work, and that's part of my real life. Yes, I have a spiritual life. Sundays are my spiritual life. And maybe sometimes even Wednesday night. But no, my job, that's my real life drawer. Or maybe you're like me, I still am old-fashioned and have like a to-do list. I know I've shared this with you before. So I go to my to-do list all the time and say, okay, I need to do this, I need to do this. And that's part of my real life drawer. And we go there all the time. But what Paul David Tripp says is, yes, most of us Christians, we also have this spiritual drawer. And it's great, it's a spiritual drawer. This is called a CD. So sometimes we play music and you're worshiping in your car and you're doing all these amazing, and that's great, but it's for that moment, right? Sometimes. And then our spiritual drawer, we may even wake up and have Bible study. And we have time with Jesus, but my time with Jesus is from 6 to 6:30, and then, Jesus, thank you, now I'm going to work. I go back to my real life drawer, and we separate. We may even have books that we like to read. And so that's part of our our spiritual life drawer, a prayer journal that we keep, right? And so, yes, this is part of this. Now, we tithe. Oh, yeah, Jesus, I'm going to give you a little bit. And so we tithe. So Jesus, that's yours. And we separate. And then if we're super spiritual, we might even have some tracts. And we have moments that we evangelize. But what I want you to see is kind of separate them. Like you have your real life drawer that you go to all the time, and your spiritual life drawer that you go to when it's convenient. Certain times of day, I may go to this, but other times, okay, Jesus, I've given you your time. And so that's the point that Paul David Tripp makes. And I think what Jesus is bringing us to in the Sermon on the Mount is, I don't want you to have two drawers. You have one drawer as a Christian. All of your life, everything that you've been blessed with, is not for you. It's not for your sake. It's for the kingdom. So the question is, are we honoring God in everything? And that's the point that Jesus begins to start making. And so this week, we're going to look, this week and next week, he's going to challenge us with, how do you look at your money? How do you look at your clothing? How do you look at your food? How do you look at all these things that God blesses you with? Is it truly for the kingdom purpose? Our first handout, first question on your handout, if you have one, is this. Where is your treasure? Look at verse 19 with me again. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. See, in this real life drawer, this top drawer, right, there's all kinds of treasures. The Greek word for treasures is thesaurus, where we get our word for thesaurus, okay? And it truly means a storehouse of treasures, like this storehouse of treasures. Now, what's the problem with us having a storehouse of treasures in this real life drawer? What does the text say? What happens to those things if we're doing this for accumulation purposes, of us trying to get a bigger drawer and more stuff in our real life drawer? It says, moth and rust destroy, and thieves break in and steal. Now, think about something real quick with me. The early Christians, we've talked about this some. Were most of them very wealthy, or most of them not so much? Most of them were not. Now, how did they view someone that had a lot of wealth at their time? How did their mindset, if they saw somebody that had a lot of money, how do you think they viewed them? Well, they must be doing something right because God's blessing them, right? So there's this mindset of, okay, you have a lot of money, you must be doing something right because God is blessing you like crazy. But what Jesus starts saying is, just because somebody has a lot of money doesn't mean they're honoring me. Just because someone has a lot of stuff, they can be putting it in their real life drawer and accumulating for themselves. And he's starting to say, moths and rust and thieves will destroy those things. They will be temporary. Now think about a moth. A moth destroys the most basic element of life, like your clothing. Like, you can go to, I don't even know what good stores are. Like, where are nice clothes? Do you buy Buckle? I don't know. Somewhere at the mall. I mean, the mall's like really nice. I mean, but if you go there, you can buy the nicest material. You know what? It's not going to last. That material is not going to last forever. And that's the point, is you have these little insects, the moth that can absolutely destroy even if it's the nicest clothes out there, it will destroy it. Then it says rust. And now you may not know this, but the original Greek word is not rust, okay? That's not, it's just a way for our translators to try to give us an image. That's not what it says. The word is brosis, which means something that eats away at something else. So yeah, if it's metal, that's rust, right? Rust corrodes, okay? That's the picture. But it's a much general term than that in the Hebrew, okay? So what it's saying is there's no earthly treasure that's safe. I want you to think about that. No earthly treasure. If you have clothes, moths can destroy that. If you're storing grain, you can have rats or mice or something get in that, right? I mean, that's not forever. I'm sure that never happens at the co-op, but you can have critters get in and destroy. What if you're planting stuff in the ground? You can have worms and things that destroy that. That's the point, is there are things that consume our treasures, whatever those treasures may look like. And then maybe you have something that you're storing at your house, and he says, that's not safe either, because thieves can break in and steal that. So nothing that you have is safe in the ancient world. Now today, I'll tell you, we do our best to try to protect things. So we have pest control guys that come around and spray, right? Because we want to keep those critters out. Or we have mouse traps, which I tell you, I don't miss the days of living down on the farm where about every few days you wake up and there'd be a mouse. And I don't like touching mice, okay? That you can judge me if you want, but I'm like, let's just throw the trap away too, okay? So, and then, or rats. I mean, rat poison. We had to do that one time when we were in Charleston. We had this big rat in our apartment, and we didn't cause a mouse the first time, so we tried to trap it. We did everything we could. Couldn't do anything. So we just put some rat poison out, and it died in the wall. It smelled like you thought it would, and so that was lovely. But we do everything we can, and then thieves, well, you know what? Our cars have alarms on there. Some of our houses have alarms on there, and we do everything we can as Americans to say, I'm going to keep mine. Like, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure all this stuff doesn't attack. Guess what? It's still temporary. It is still temporary. So if we have a real-life drawer that we're putting things in, one day, we'll find out it was wasted. It was absolutely wasted. So my biggest prayer is that I want to see everything the way you see it. God, get me away from having two drawers. I want to see that everything that you bless us with is for your kingdom and your purposes and not my kingdom and my purposes. He wants everything to be an investment. Look at verse 20 with me. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in or steal. Jesus wants us to store our treasures in heaven. And if you do that, if you're living for if everything that God blesses you with, if everything that He gives, it is for the purpose of Him and His kingdom, guess what? Nothing can take that away. That's an investment in the kingdom. Is that how you see your stuff? Now don't miss, when Jesus says this, understand, He's saying this right after those great 3 acts of righteousness. You get that? Jesus just finished saying, give to the needy. Yes, do that. When you do that, do it the right way. Pray. Yes, you need to pray. All of us need to pray. And when you do that, do it the right way. Fast. Yes, all of you need to fast. And when you do that, do it the right way. These 3 great acts of righteousness, you know what they are? They're storing up treasures in heaven. Like, as we do these things that Jesus tells us to do, as we're obedient to walk with Him and be what He's called us to be, there are treasures in heaven. I don't know what that looks like. I've said this a million times. I can't wait to find out, though. I can't wait to find out. So the question I have is, am I doing everything? So 1 Corinthians 10:31, whether you eat or drink, whatever you do everything for the glory of God. Everything. Is that your heart? Is that your heart? Are you doing everything for the glory of God? Because one day, if you're not, and you have your own drawer here and it's for you, this stuff is going to fade away. It's going to fade away. Now, let me also be clear real quick right here. Jesus is not banning possessions themselves. He's not saying, okay, just go live in a tent somewhere and, just kind of be a Bedouin and just go around, do what, and never have it. It's not what he's saying. Okay, that's not what he's saying at all. He's also not saying that it's wrong to say, I'm storing up stuff for a rainy day. Like, don't have health insurance. That's not what he's saying. Matter of fact, Proverbs 6 is very clear. Like, it praises the ant for storing up food in the summer for winter. Okay? So he's not saying that. Okay? Hear that. But the heart of kind of what Jesus is saying, what is he forbidding? He's forbidding storing up treasures for yourself. Do not store up treasures for yourself. That's the heartbeat. Don't be selfish when you accumulate things. So he's not saying, hey, you can't have anything. You can't. No, Jesus blesses you with it. View it the way He views it. How can I leverage this, Jesus, for your kingdom and your glory? That's the question. How can I make much of you with what you blessed us with? And at the end of the day, it's so hard because if we are having this and we're trying to get a bigger drawer and we're having nicer stuff in it and we're collecting more and more, that is coveting, which He tells us not to do back in the 10 Commandments. Do not covet. Don't collect stuff for your sake. Everything you have is for Him. Look at verse 21. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So I'm just going to ask, okay? We're not going to, but how much stock do you put in this drawer? How much stock do you put in your real life drawer? Because what Jesus says is where your treasure, if your treasure's right here, that's where your heart is. Okay, that sounds like Jesus speak. No. Listen. Your heart is who you are. It's like the essence of your being. If your treasure is in worldly stuff and getting a bigger drawer and having nicer stuff in it, that's where your heart is. You don't fool Jesus. You don't fool Jesus. So where is your treasure? See, we can come here on Sunday mornings and look the part of a Christian and bring our Bibles and have notebooks and do all these things. And Jesus gives us a test. He says, do you want to know if you're really following me? Do you want to know if you truly have a heart of a disciple? Where's your treasure? Because wherever your treasure is, that's where your heart is. Is your treasure in this? So I'm thankful, I said this a minute ago, that over and over in Scripture, we do see things about rewards in heaven. I don't know what that's going to look like, but let me tell you this. The greatest treasure that you have or I have in heaven is our Heavenly Father. Don't miss that. One day, soon, we will all be in heaven if we know Jesus. In His presence. That is the greatest treasure you have. That is the greatest treasure you have. And that is going to be awesome. I can't wait for that. And just know this, everything else, anything else that you could possibly put in this drawer, anything else you can try to accumulate, it pales in comparison with your Heavenly Father. Everything. Everything. And that's all Jesus is trying to tell us. Don't get caught up in this. We have a world that is, and it draws us in. And Jesus says, no, remember what you have. You have treasure in heaven. Yeah, maybe some rewards, but you have your Father in heaven, and you'll be with Him. Focus on that. How can you leverage everything God's given you for His glories? On my wrist, I have a verse of Colossians 3:2. It says, set your minds on things that are above and not on things on earth. Set your eyes on things above. Which brings us to our next point. How is your vision? How's your vision? Look with me at verses 22 and 23. The eye is the lamp of the body. So then if your eye is clear, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light that is in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? And this is kind of, because we're in the middle of talking about storing up treasures in heaven and living for the Lord. And so we need to ask the question. We need to ask a question right here. How do we see things? How do we see things the way God sees them? It's a good question to ask right here. If he's talking about how we store treasures, do we see things the way God sees them, or do we see things the way the world sees them? So the eye is the lamp of the body. If we have healthy eyes, our whole body will be full of light. Now, what does he mean about healthy eyes? It's kind of just a weird spot. What is healthy eyes? Greek word, I know you love when I do the Greek, is hoplos, okay, which means this. It means single. And here's what Jesus is saying, if you take it literally in the Hebrew, is you should have a single focus on heaven. A singular focus on Jesus. You shouldn't have a double vision. Sometimes have patients come in. I sometimes have patients come in that have like double vision. It's debilitating. I don't know if anybody's ever had issues with that, where you can't see and you start having headaches, you start having all kinds of issues. Sometimes you see that, and I'm telling you, there's nothing that stops you in your tracks more than double vision. And I think that's true spiritually. Like if we have one eye on Jesus on Sunday, and we have this spiritual drawer on Sunday, and one eye on Jesus in the morning times, during our worship time, during our prayer time, that's great. But if we have another eye on the world, and how can we get more and get more and get more, I'm telling you, it will stop you in your tracks spiritually. You won't be able to do much for Jesus if that is your vision. And so Jesus says, no. You need to have a singular vision where both of your eyes are directly on the throne of God. It's directly on Jesus. That is how you live. Don't be looking at the world with one eye and Jesus with the other. No, singular focus on heaven. And it's talking about, what about if you have darkness? Like if you do that, you're full of light. There was a couple weeks ago, we were leaving, and we turned out the lights in here. And it's so dark because there's no windows. And when there's darkness, you don't know where to go. Have you ever been there spiritually where you know your focus is not on Jesus and you don't know where he's taking you? You don't know where to go next. But when your focus is on Jesus and him alone, he fills you with light. He fills you with life and he shows you where to go. If we have double vision, we're confused. And there's darkness. There's darkness. But what's weird, I want you to think about this. Verses 19 through 21, Jesus is talking about treasures. And where do we have our treasures? Do we have them here on earth or in heaven? In verse 24, he talks about you can't serve both God and money. And here in the middle of it, he's talking about vision. What's up with that? I mean, does Jesus have ADHD or something? Like, why is he talking about vision in the middle of talking about money and treasure? And the answer is no. Now, here's something I want you to hear, because their culture is extremely important. There's a difference in their culture with having a good eye and a bad eye, and it has nothing to do with their actual vision, okay? It has nothing to do with their actual vision. They're Jewish idioms. They were expressions in Jesus' day that represent something else. In the first century, a good eye, ayin tova, it meant that a person was generous. So if you have a good eye, you have a generous heart. Like you are generous with your money. You're generous with your time. And if you have a bad eye, ayin ra'ah, it means that you are stingy. It means that you are stingy. So rabbis would say this. Listen, this is rabbinic from the time of Jesus. If a person gives a gift, let him give it with a good eye. And what that means is if you're giving a gift, don't just kind of give him a little. No, be generous. Like have that kind of heart that you are generous with what you're giving. Don't give it reluctantly, right? Now, where on earth did they get the idea that a good eye was generosity and a bad eye was stinginess? It's in the Bible. It's in the Bible. Listen to Proverbs 22:9. He who has a good eye, or generous, your text probably says generous. It literally says, he who has a good eye will be blessed, for he gives some of his food to the poor. So you see, in the Bible it says, if you have a good eye, you're generous with your food. You're generous. Proverbs 28:22 says this, a man with an evil eye hastens after wealth, does not know that want will come upon him. So a person with an evil eye is stingy, tries to keep, this is my drawer. Jesus, you can't have it. That's an evil eye. So here's my question. In your heart, you know the answer. Nobody else probably knows the fullness of this answer. Your spouse might know some of it. But in your heart, do you have a good eye or a bad eye? Like in your heart, are you someone that is, God, you have blessed me with this. I just want to be generous because this isn't even mine. This is yours. And I want to make much of you. Or in your heart, it's like, no, this is mine. No, I know. They don't deserve it. I do. I worked hard for it. What do you have a good eye or a bad eye? It's a hard question. I mean, I'm thankful for Julie because she's definitely a person with a good eye and very generous. Where do you fall? I've learned a lot from her. Growing up, I was one, me and my brother, it's funny, I was the saver. Like, I would always store stuff, and I'd always kind of make fun of him, like, Matt, I've got more money than you, I'm 4 years younger than you. What's going on here, buddy? And it's not about storing up treasures for yourself. It's not. Do we have a good eye or a bad eye? And I'd ask this, in this moment, do we truly believe Jesus? Do we truly believe that we need to be investing everything he's given us on heaven? Like, is it worth it? Because it looks crazy to the world. I'll be honest with you. It looks crazy to the world to be investing in heaven. Do you believe it, though? Like, do you really believe it? Are you living by that? Are you living by that? But the heart of a disciple is, God, I just want to make much of your kingdom. I want to make much of your kingdom. It's not about my kingdom, it's about yours, Jesus. Is that your heart? Last question. Which master will we serve? Look at verse 24. No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth. No one can serve two masters. You cannot serve God and wealth. Now, we like to play gymnastics around some of Jesus' words and say, whoa, I don't know about all that. I don't know. And we start trying to figure out how can we get around the reality of this verse. When Jesus says you cannot, it is impossible to serve God and have your own drawer. Impossible. And we're like, okay, well, so what you need to hear is the word serve in this is big, is the word doulos. Anybody know what doulos means? It's a slave. It's a slave. Now, here's why that's important. Can you work for two employers? Is it possible as an American to work for two different people? When I came out of school, I worked part of the week, Tuesday through Friday, at a pediatric office in Lawrenceburg. On Mondays, I worked in the ER at Murray Regional. I had two employers. They had two different sets of things they wanted me to do, two different everything, right? Yes, I had two employers. That is not the word here. Because it says you cannot be a slave, not employer, not an employee, you can't be an employee to two employers. It's you cannot be a slave to two masters. Meaning you have to pick. You have to pick. Because if you have a slave owner, you don't have multiple, you have one. So if this slave owner tells you to do something, guess what? You can say, yeah, I don't have to listen to you. You're not my owner. You're not my boss. And your singular focus is on your slave owner. And that's what's going on here. And Jesus says, just like you cannot have more than one master as a slave, you can't also serve both God and worldly possessions. You can't. You cannot do it. It is impossible. You will either hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Let me tell you, again, these were poor people in their day. Do you think there was a temptation for these Jews in first century to want to go after stuff? Listen, Rome was taxing them 60%. 60% was going to Rome. Do you understand? They were being so oppressed. And I'm telling you, they longed for stuff because they felt the weight of that all the time. And Jesus is trying to bring them back and say, it's not about getting more stuff. Listen to one of the writings. This is 100 years before Jesus. Rabbis were actually teaching about this before Jesus came. Do you know that? 2nd century BC. Here's what they wrote. My children, love of money leads to idolatry because once they are led astray by money, they designate as gods those who were not gods. It makes anyone who has it go out of his mind. On account of money, I utterly lost my children. And the writer of that also goes on to say that Satan used material idolatry to lead the children of God astray. He still does that. You realize that? That is our world. This is a ploy of Satan for us to say, we need more. You need to covet. You need to be greedy. That's the American way. That's why you should be here, to get more and more and more. And Jesus is trying to say, no, you have a choice. If you're going to follow me, follow me. If you want to be like the world, that's your choice, but you can't have both. You cannot have both. Choose. Who are you going to serve? You going to serve me, or are you going to serve your kingdom? Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Where's your treasure? You cannot serve both God and money. So right now, I want you to be real, just for a moment. We're finishing up. Do you have two drawers? Do you have that real life drawer that you go to over and over and over in the week, and you're thinking, this is mine. This is mine. I've earned it. This is mine. Or do you see like Jesus does, and it's all one big joy? And everything is his. Everything is his, because you cannot serve both. Go ahead and bow your heads and close your eyes. I just want to ask these questions to you one more time. I want you to think about these questions. Jesus is calling us and our hearts back to him. We live in a culture that is the exact opposite of this, guys. Listen to the questions again. First, where is your treasure? Maybe you've spent year after year after year storing up treasures here on earth. Guys, it's not too late. You're still here. He can still work on you. It's not too late for him to change your mindset. Where your treasure is, there your heart's going to be. So is your treasure real? Be real with Jesus. Is your treasure truly in heaven this morning? Because one day we will be with our Father, and nothing here comes close to the beauty of that. Jesus has made it possible that we can be with God forever. So this morning, maybe you're in a place where you need to return to your first love, and you need to start running after him again and treasuring the things of heaven. Maybe that's how you need to respond. Second question, how's your vision? First of all, are your eyes singularly focused on the things of God, or are you running after things that have no eternal value? And maybe right now, your eyes have been preoccupied with worldly stuff. Maybe this morning, you need to come back and say, God, I just want to focus on you and you alone. But even more so, do you have a good eye or bad eye? So maybe God's convicting you that you haven't been generous with what he's entrusted to you. Now, this isn't a plea. Listen to me. This is not a plea for Grace Fellowship Church and saying, hey, you need to give more tithe. I'm not asking you to do that. I'm just asking you, are you being a good steward of the treasure that he's given you, the resources that he's blessed you with? How are you being generous and impacting the kingdom with what he's given you? See, thankfully, he's got us in a season. We said this from the beginning. God has us in a season right here in this church where we don't have a lot of bills. We're not paying pastors. We're not paying all these stuff. All we pay is for this building once a week. We have an opportunity with our tithes to make a difference for the kingdom. Let me ask you, are you doing that? Are you doing that? How are you blessing others in this season of life? So maybe right now you need to spend time asking God how you can be generous with what he's given you. Maybe that's how you need to respond. And the last question, which master will you serve? I mean, this is the realest question of them all. Is Jesus your master? Is he your master? Since we have an enemy that wants to use so much stuff in this world to draw us away from him. That's how he operates. And it's worked. It's worked in the Old Testament. It's worked in the New Testament. And it works today. Maybe you need to spend time devoting your heart back to Jesus this morning. So I'm going to pray, and as we sing, this is your time. This is your time to singularly focus on him. Please be doers of what he's telling you to do this morning. God, I thank you that you're worth it. You are worth it, Jesus. You are worth everything. You're worthy of our worship, and you're worthy of our lives. You're worthy of our resources. God, get us into the place where we see it's all about you, and it's not about us. Help us to have a good eye that's generous, that makes much of your kingdom. Help us not to be stingy. But God, I just pray for hearts that serve you and you alone. So whatever you need to do today in our hearts, I pray that you would do it in these moments. In Jesus' name.